Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Greenfield City Council special meeting on January 25th at 6 p.m. at the John Zahn Community Center and via Zoom. This meeting is being recorded by the City Council and GCTV 17. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time.
So Janet 22, there's also someone online that is recording, and I have their name.
And John is? Yep.
22 minutes.
Okay. So I have three of you. Thank you for that. In accordance with MGL 30A, no person shall address a meeting of the public without permission of the chair, and all shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting of a public body. If after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting. And if the person does not withdraw, the chair authorizes a constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting. Clerk Scott, roll call, please.
Councillor Golub,
Here.
President Gwynn,
Here.
Councillor Disorder,
Here.
Councillor Bottomley,
Here.
Councillor Bullock,
Here.
Councillor Gilmore,
Here.
Councillor Lapinski,
Here.
Councillor Mayo,
Here.
Councillor Healy,
Here.
Councillor Elmer,
Here.
Councillor Forgy,
Here.
Councillor Ricketts,
Present.
Councillor Toronzo.
Here.
President Gwynn, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 3, can we have a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved, Ricketts.
Motion's been made and seconded to suspend the rules of procedure to disposition of business. All in favor?
Aye.
Me.
Yes.
This is a debatable motion.
Oh, okay.
It is the chair's obligation to ask for debate prior to calling for a vote on something like that. I object to this motion because we have not yet heard from the public. So I would entertain this motion afterwards, and I'd like to move to table this motion. But no, nobody else here wants to hear from the public, so.
Is there any other discussion on this motion?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Any abstentions? Thank you. We'll suspend the rules of procedure. Councillor Gilmore, could you read item number 4 on the agenda, please?
Yes. Working section with the Executive Chief of Police and Finance Director by invitation. Strategic planning to address the proposed elimination of the third shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. of the Greenfield Police Department with an alternative plan to be introduced.
Thank you. I appreciate you just reading that, as it's not really a motion, but it's what we're doing here this evening. I'd also just like to make a few comments before we start. I'd like to just, first of all, thank all of you that have reached out to this council this week. We had feedback from many people via many sources, whether they were calling us or emailing us. And I want you to know this council, I can't speak for everyone as an individual, but the many that I have talked to all have been trying to respond and take your information, and we appreciate the community coming together and working on this. I'd like to set the tone for this evening a little bit of cooperation. This isn't a Senate hearing. I'd like to avoid, emotion and accusation and really focus on information and resolve. We've got to move this forward, and that's what I'd like to accomplish tonight. So I just want everyone to pull for the same thing, which is to move us forward and let the citizens that have been getting in touch with us and those that are concerned as much as we are know that we're working on this. So I thank you all for that. I'd like to start with inviting the mayor and then anyone else that you'd like to invite to the table with you to come up, and then we'll start by you kind of updating us from where we are from when we were here in the past.
There we go. We would have Diana Schindler, Finance Director, here to speak about the finance piece that we've presented to you and any questions you may have. And Police Chief Haig is here to speak to you about any operational issues or questions that you may have with regard to the plan that we are ready to put forward to resolve the midnight shift issue. And then Chief of Staff Danny Letourneau is here primarily to talk about staffing issues or from the perspective of, her knowledge of this issue, because she's been with us as we work through this all along.
Mayor, if you could slide that microphone
closer?
closer to you, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure
Thank
we
you.
can all hear.
All right. Oh, that's better, isn't it?
It's much better.
Thank you. So I'd like to start out tonight with thank yous. So basically, thank you to all the counselors for being here. As of Monday, we weren't sure, because of the weather, how we were going to pull this together. So thank you, all of you, for being here. And thank you for those of you who are on, counselors who are on Zoom. I want to thank President Gwynn and Vice President Chris Forgy as well for working with Chief Haig and myself and Chief of Staff Danny Letourneau and Director Schindler to find a way forward. And they did that in the early morning, Thursday morning when we met. And a special shout out to Clerk Scott and Director Warner. Kathy came, because as you know, there's all kinds of rules around special meetings and how they get posted and so forth. And this was one that came up pretty quickly. So Clerk Scott, Kathy came to the City Hall in the snowstorm on Monday to help us ensure that this meeting would be held properly and that you would receive all of the information that we had for you in a timely manner. Director Warner, out of concern, because he'd been up all night anyway, so what's a few more hours? Director Warner, out of concern for Kathy's safety, drove her around to each of your houses to hand deliver your packets as required. And I don't know if you know that or not. Maybe some of you were there and saw them. But that is what happened on Monday afternoon when we finally assembled everything. So that's basically what we do. We rise to the occasion in City Hall and really around the city. And lastly, I want to give a thank you to the women and men of the Greenfield Police Department and Chief Haig for continuing to work under very tough circumstances and for not giving up on finding a solution. It's never easy, counselors, as you witnessed last week, to deliver bad news, especially when it concerns the safety of the people of Greenfield, which we all care about. But that's exactly what Chief Haig and I had to do a week ago with the news of the pending end of the third shift, or the midnight shift, or the overnight shift, or one of its many names. But the chief and I, both of us, want you to know that we heard you. We heard you last week. Your concerns are our concerns. Your frustrations are our frustrations. And again, we heard you. So as the chief and I left the meeting, I instructed him to come up with a plan to resolve this problem, if such a plan could exist, because as I think was indicated, they're not always that easy to come up with for a variety of reasons, contractual and otherwise. But if we could come up with another alternative, I wanted him to work very hard on that. He assured me he would, and then he proceeded to work for the remainder of Wednesday and into the better part of the very early morning hours on Thursday with his union representatives of the Superior and patrol units to find a solution. And that solution is the plan that we're presenting to you and the people of Greenfield and our neighbors in our surrounding communities tonight. Given that this couldn't happen without the consideration and the cooperation of our police officers, I want to acknowledge again that it is a testament to the respect that they have for Chief Haig that we've been able to come up with this plan, for the work that they all do in the community on a daily basis, and for the people that they are charged with protecting. And so, the plan. Full staffing for the bulk of the overnight shift will begin March 1st, and let me repeat that again. Full staffing for the bulk of the overnight shift will begin March 1st, 2023, and remain in place temporarily through June 30th of 2023.
Mayor, let's try to figure out, excuse me, what this is doorbelling.
So,
Something keeps, I think the network's dropping.
and I don't see DoorDash delivering us dinner tonight, so.
I apologize.
Yes, we'll keep going.
We're not sure where that tone is coming from.
The agreement struck with the police collective bargaining units changes staffing for patrol sergeants and patrol officers to 2 10-hour shifts, 4 days on, 4 days off. The first shift will operate from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The second shift will operate from 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. From 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., there will be no coverage by the Greenfield Police Department. We have notified the state police to cover 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. as needed. Those hours are generally slower or have fewer calls. With the understanding that this is a temporary fix for the time period that I mentioned, which is March 1st to June 30th, the Greenfield officers have agreed to waive certain union rights around overtime and staff and shift bidding. Officers on the first and second shift will receive $300 per week per officer from March 1 to June 30th for the inconvenience of the change in work hours. This will save significantly on overtime, which we can't really afford at this point with our budget anyway, and will allow us to fill those hours of the overnight shift. So basically, all but the 4 hours from 3 to 7 are going to be covered, as opposed to no hours, which was the situation last week. Let's be clear about that agreement on the $300 per week, that cost does not include Chief Haig or Deputy Chief Gordon. They are administrators, and they do not answer calls except in extreme emergencies. With the COPS grant, we will be able to bring on 2 new officers in the early spring and a 3rd officer in June. Additionally, I have committed ARPA money to assist with some of the costs of providing this coverage. So in closing, we look forward to continuing to work with you to come up with a budget for the next fiscal year that restores the normal operations of the Greenfield Police Department and the protection of the citizens that we all serve. And as I mentioned in the beginning, Director Schindler, our finance director, is here to answer, and I know you have your materials that you received the other day, to answer your questions on the finance piece. And Chief Haig is certainly here to answer any of your questions on the operational piece. And I don't know, President Gwynn, how do you wish to proceed?
We're going to open it shortly to questions. I just want to ask a couple of things just to kind of summarize what you just said. There will be no change to what we're presently doing until March 1st.
That is correct.
March 1st, we're staying intact, all shifts through March 1st. And then March 1st to June 30th, 3 to 7 in this plan would be covered on an as-needed basis by the state police, because our present police force has made some arrangements in order to cover the shifts, which you identified with the chief at the last meeting as the most concerning in that third shift, which are the times when the bars are letting out and all of that, which will have our own in-house coverage.
Yes.
And that's right through the time we take a look at the budget. I would ask counselors, if you have direct questions for any of the entities, whether it's financial or staffing. I have asked all of them to accompany the mayor here tonight, so we don't have to have a pause in trying to figure it out. I also invited the Public Safety Commission here this evening as our guest. And we have 2 members of Public Safety Commission here with us tonight, which I thought would be important if we have questions that go in that direction. I also put an invitation out to the Sheriff's Department, and I haven't seen Sheriff Donnellan, but I did invite him because he is part of the community, and I wanted that kind of encompassing nature. So those are the people that are available, which are...
Dan, I can answer the question about the sheriff.
Sure.
He and I have talked. I don't know how he actually ended up with his day-to-day, but he was due to be at a sheriff's meeting, I think, in Framingham. And he said he would try his best to get here, but given the weather, he may or may not be able to be here.
Thank you, Mayor.
We do have communications from him, though, if any questions should arise.
Perfect. And I wanted to make sure that we had as many of the people that we were directing questions to in the past all assembled here for us tonight, so we could get those questions directly if we needed. So I will open the floor to counselors that have questions about the plan that was put in front of us tonight, and see if we can answer some of the things that you've heard throughout the week and move this forward. Counselor Cullum?
So I hear your request, Councilor Gwynn, to keep this really respectful. And so this is a question that I have received from, and that I'm sure all of us have received from many constituents, and I'll try to ask it with complete respect and kindness. And that is, I am really glad that you're coming to us with a plan tonight. And I don't understand why this plan was come to on Thursday morning as opposed to before you came to us on Wednesday night. You said that after the meeting, you instructed Chief Haig to come up with a plan, and you had to figure it out. And so you did on Thursday morning, or at least a better plan than what you came to us on Wednesday night. Mm-hmm. And I was exhausted after that meeting. And I'm sure that a lot of the people here were too. And I don't know that that was necessary. And I'm confused about why you came to us without this plan on Wednesday night. You said you had to deliver bad news, and clearly you didn't have to deliver this bad news. You didn't have to come to us with that plan. So just why did that have to happen? Or why did it happen?
I appreciate that question, and I may not be the only one to answer it. This issue has been weighing on the police department and myself and others who have been involved in them, both from a financial standpoint, Director Schindler and former finance director Liz Gilman, and Chief of Staff for all those months. And I think we tried to convey to you that we looked at a lot of different options. And we have to always consider that we are not making any of these decisions in a vacuum. we have to consult the people that are actually going to be out on the shifts doing the work. We did not have full financial information, I think, as we progressed through this. So it didn't appear that we had a way to fund us going forward without eventually running out of money. It was going to require some cooperation. I know that there are people out there who have all kinds of different ways that maybe this could have worked, but they're not the people that work in the police department. They are not the people that are charged with making those decisions. It is the chief and his people that he works with and the deputy chief who are charged with making those decisions. So, you know, sometimes, I don't know if you're a football fan or not, I don't know how many of you are, but sometimes you get to a point and you realize, as I said, we heard you, we heard your concerns. They were our concerns too. But every now and then you have to come up with a Hail Mary, and maybe that Hail Mary works. I asked the chief to do that, to go for that Hail Mary, if there was such a thing, because he had to work it out, as I plainly think you see here, with the people who actually are going to be on the street doing the work. And that is what he did. And I don't think it was an easy task to do. It took a while to get there. So that's my answer. That is the truthful answer. I don't think that we, without understanding, without knowing on Wednesday night of last week whether or not there would be uniform agreement on any one plan other than the ones that we had already looked at and discussed with officers. So we did go back to the drawing table. I think that is to be commended. Not that I'm looking for accolades. I didn't mean it that way. I just meant it was I want to, as I said before, commend the chief for not, and the police department for not giving up and for going back to the drawing board. Yeah.
1 second.
Could Danny continue?
Yeah.
I think she might
I
have some.
wanted to just add to that. I just wanted to give a little context to the conversations for the fall and then what happened last week. When we first discussed this as being the necessary option, the overnight, the 11 to 7 shift being eliminated. I remember, I think I sat in the mayor's office and I think I actually used the word, "This sucks." You know, I mean, I live here as well.
And we use that kind of language in the confines.
I probably said something different, actually. And I'm not I'm not joking about that. We do, and the other thing is, last week, it did in fact honestly feel like the only possibility at that time. I do not believe, as the person who did sit in as the mayor's representative on most of the negotiations with the unions, of all unions, not just the police union, I don't know that we would have been able to strike such an agreement with them before last Wednesday. I mean, honestly, I'm going a little off script here. And I don't know that everybody kind of heard the dire pushback and need until last week. I mean, we really did hear what the uproar about that last week. And to be quite frank, the new plan that's coming forward also kind of sucks. It still is bad news, right? So it's not great. I work with staffing for all departments, and so to speak generally in the city, we don't have the luxury that some private companies and even some well-funded nonprofits have to do things like hire people while someone's still there and have overlap in staffing and training. We have shortages in staffing and have to cancel things, close offices to the public here and there. People get COVID and we have to close whole offices all the time. And I have to help the department heads shuffle and figure out which the best way and which is the least hard option. And so this is not a unique, this is just a much higher stakes example because it is the police, it is public safety, and the police are in the limelight right now. But we work with, you know, there's a crisis a month in terms of staffing because of short staff, low budgets, and illnesses all year. So I just wanted to put that as the kind of overarching theme.
We've got some follow-up to that. I just want to give like a third-party perspective because unlike normal, when I find out things all there Vice President Forgy and I were involved in that Thursday morning meeting with the chief, with the mayor, with Chief of Staff Letourneau, with the finance director. They called, they said there was a possible plan that was put together, and would I come? I invited Vice President Forgy to come with me. You have no reason to believe me. You have no reason to believe anyone here. But I will tell you, it is my true belief that the chief at that morning, and he looked like he had just walked out the building the night before. He had that same look, and he said, "I heard that, the 12 of you. I heard that council, and I heard what was going on." And I think the answer to all of this is, for whatever reason, when we all voiced opinions, we got everyone on the same page in a very odd way. The chief went to work on this. Maybe it was late. Maybe it should have happened before, but it happened. The union stepped up and came in and talked at that moment. And then the mayor and the chief worked together, and they had something fairly quickly to present. But I truly believe that when we were here Wednesday night, that wasn't the plan. And I too wish it happened earlier, but for that reason, I do think they heard us. And it was a good moment for this council, because I even said at that table that there was a point of light from all 12 of you. Every one of you made a comment or a statement that night that was not based on emotion. It was concern that we fix this. And I think it went right to work. And I would say, I didn't go home with the chief, but he said he stayed up all night working on that. And then he met with the state police that morning, and he met with the union that morning. And I have no reason to doubt that, because there was a plan. So that kind of gives you what I saw, and you can take it from there. Did you have a follow-up question? And then I'm going to just
one
move
follow-up.
around.
Yeah.
Mayo.
So this is on behalf of, I've been on council since June, and this is the week where I've been kind of surprised at how few emails I actually get as a counselor. And this is the week that I've gotten more emails than any other time. And so I feel like I have to make a request on behalf of my constituents and on the behalf of your constituents, which is, we might have differences of opinions about things, but I do believe that you have I believe that you all are very intelligent people. And that sounds, I don't mean that, I mean that really out of respect. Given all the time between the cuts and last Wednesday, I do believe that the response could have been anticipated, that our constituents' concern could have been anticipated, and that a lot of consulting could have happened, a lot of information, you said the full financial information. I believe, I could be wrong, but I wholeheartedly believe that you had the capacity to figure that out before scaring the public in the way that happened. And I guess my request is that you anticipate that your actions really, you're the mayor and the chief of police, and that they really had an impact on our constituents, which is why this room is full again. And to please think about it before you come to us with such an announcement next time, and come with the full financial information.
We're going to hear from Councilor Mayo. Doug, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you, President. I too read a lot of emails. It wasn't as many emails as I've received about certain topics, but quite a few emails from across the gambit of from my precinct to other precincts, to people just were concerned that went to meetings and attended online. And they were very supportive of the city council and how we how we responded and how we dealt with things, and they felt that we were right in step with many of their issues. And I just want to say that we hear that I too would like a workable solution, but it's too bad that it came on the backs of unions. Even though they may have agreed, but I wasn't present there at the meeting. That Police Chief Haig was there. I don't know how much pressure was put on them to come up with a deal. If they offered, that was very kind of them. But having been a union president before, I find this kind of pressuring very disconcerting, because who knows what happens next month? There could be another budget, or something could fall through the thing, and we'd have to go back to other unions and ask for a concession. But so I don't believe that was a very good strategy. I think that money is in the budget. It's just being hidden. And where in this temporary measure is justice and accountability? That's what I want to know. And that's what the members of the people who responded were calling for too. Is they were still saying that there was not enough accountability and justice being heard by certainly from the council, but not from the administration, and certainly from Police Chief Haig. There was no apology. There was not even a mention of a court case. So my question is, again, where is accountability and justice in this temporary measure? Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Mayo. I'm going to, I wanted to answer another question before you get to that piece, because there was a piece of information in there that I think is important. He posed a question about the unions. I'd like an explanation to how the union process happened, and Chief Haig explained that to us on the morning of, and if someone could just bring that up, I think that's a piece that is important to the council.
I can start, and then if the chief thinks he needs to elaborate, he can. The chief, the unions were here. I mean, you guys saw there were a number of police officers, uniformed officers, dispatch, almost entirety of dispatch who wasn't working. They were here. They saw the meeting, and so they were on board to also discuss and have conversations about how to fix this. These people care about the community as well, and you guys will notice that even still, coming up with the final workable plan, we signed. This was all signed today, so you guys have that paper in front of you now. So I think it was a mutually agreed upon plan.
Chief, anything to add to that, or, all right. Thank you. I just want to make sure that we're there. Councilor DeSorger, it's Councilor DeSorger and then Lapinski, and then she's writing them down. If you have a piece to any of this that doesn't want to wait for some reason, just get my attention. Councilor DeSorger.
I first wanted to say I've talked with some police during the week, and I just wanted to shout out a thank you also.
Jenny, can you just pull that a little closer?
I wanted to make a shout out also to the men and women in our police force who have been working short and extra hours, and that they've once again stepped up and decided that they would, you talked to the union reps and that they were going to help out. They put their lives on the line for our safety all the time, and I'm grateful. And I just wanted to start by saying that. I feel like right now we're in a better place than we were last week, but I think that we're still in a place that we shouldn't be in. And I actually have to set the record straight on a couple of things, in my opinion. I heard at the beginning of this about the information that we received, And I'd like to be very clear that I have not received information that I asked for. And I actually had a talk with Diana Schindler today about this. I had a really tough week. I didn't sleep the first 2 nights after this, really for 3 hours. I think some of you know this. I've talked to many of you on the phone. I've been on the phone for hours with people who were afraid, and I reached out to some of what I thought were the smartest people in the room to see how I could help. But the worst phone call that I had was from the mother of a firefighter. And she was concerned about the scene being cleared in a domestic violence or a violent situation that's usually cleared so that EMS or AMR can go in and take care of folks. And that was the one phone call that I actually had to get off the phone because I could feel my voice was starting to crack, and I thought, well, get off the phone quick. So we ended that, and I reached out to the fire chief to ask for the policy on that. I put it in writing, as I have done for 3.5 years. I was told to write to the clerk and to Tammy, and used to be Geneva, and now it's to Quinn. And I write to the council president and the council vice president and the person I'm asking the questions of. And I asked my question, and 18 hours later, I have an answer back from the fire chief. This is what's happened to me. I just have to say this. I want to move forward, but I have to be very clear. I ask for information that I never receive. I asked for information. I won't belabor the point, but I asked for information on how big the Sally Port was going to be and how big the one was that we had. I never even got a reply. But on a happy note, I'm sticking to the point here. This is very, very important. When I didn't get that, I went up to the police department, and a wonderful police officer came out to help me. I had had help from a friend of mine, Bob, who builds houses, and he told me how to eyeball a place. He told me that telephone poles are 40 feet high and showed me how long my house were so I could estimate the answer, because I'm not given it. And I am now the chair of Ways and Means. This is not acceptable, and it's not a way to do business. If any of you want my emails, I'm not Mrs. Foyer. I'm happy to send them to you. So I just have to go on.
When did you ask for that
No,
information?
I have all the dates.
No,
That
when
was
did you
March.
ask for that particular information that you're speaking
That,
of?
I have them all right here. I can read them if you'd like, because
No,
the
just tell
tone
me the
is so
date or the
lovely.
day.
I would love to read how kindly I write. I'd love to read one, but I'm not
I
going to because
know.
it takes
I
much
get you,
time.
you do.
That was March 15th, another one was May 3rd. I say things like, "You're so good, I know you're so busy, thank you in advance," and I don't get the answer. And today, because we're coming to, public safety is on the line. Public safety is on the line. That was my whole life's work. And I actually couldn't believe last week. I thought, am I from another planet? I did scheduling. This was my job. And I heard one person left in July, another one October 7th. I had to go look through the paper. I asked exactly the dates, and I told there was some improper form that I didn't, maybe there's some new way that we're going to ask for information. The financial part of this is very important, and I actually, as you know, Diana, I do understand it. On the munis paper that we got, we have encumbrances of salaries. I wanted to know who left when, because it appeared to me that we encumbered salaries of folks that weren't there. So, being an intelligent person, I asked for information that I didn't receive and that I never received. I would like to point out that Lieutenant Dodge sent me something on the grant when I didn't get information after 10 days. So I have to say that. I want to also say that I had a lot of people that came to me that they are thrilled, because I told people when I heard, I think an announcement should have been made the day after for all the people who are having anxiety attacks. For any person at home that didn't know this, I knew the day after, and I think that the entire city should have known the day after that we have a plan, that it's not going to be all night. My little grandson that I picked up today, I'm telling him about it, and he said, well, that's a bad idea, Grammy. He said, then the robbers should all come at 3. And I thought, right, Jackson. He just turned 12. And I'm really convinced that he's not going to grow up to be a robber. But if he was, he'd know when to come here at 3 a.m. So I simply asked for information, and it doesn't help right now to beat people up. I get that. But the truth needs to be told. You told people on the radio, I heard you during this week. You said, on the radio, Mayor, you got the grant in December. And I have a piece of paper in my hand, just a moment, with a signature on it. November 16th, 12:16 p.m. And I thought, we were looking, it doesn't really matter. That's not the point. The point is to tell the truth. That's what I learned at home. To tell the truth and to be part of a team, I need to be part of the team. I will help you. It was snowing out today. No matter what I had today, I would have been here. I answered every call, every single call, and I'm still here to help, and I have a suggestion at the end, a couple of things. First, the charter says in section 5.7 that you could make a provision, you could have made a provision to submit a supplemental budget. I was expecting that. It didn't, just let me finish. I was expecting that. It failed to come through, which scared people. And by failing to do that, we aren't keeping people safe. I would like to also, because I did scheduling, I'd like to also suggest, and I think it is absolutely fabulous, again, this is nothing to our police department. Nothing but praise goes to the department because they're helping us. And they're working short, and they're going to work longer hours. However, I did scheduling, and I think with you, I was delighted to hear it was 4 on, 4 off. That's what it looks like, 4 on, 4 off. But if you had 12 hours, you could cover the shifts with, it'd be hard doing 4 12s. I've done them. You could cover, with 24 people, you could cover the entire shift, not have a break at 3 a.m. The scheduling pattern is used for many police and fire departments. It's a better way to use staff. It's better for morale. You'd have one person in charge, and there's only one shift change instead of 2, so you're actually going to have 2. So there's less holdover, it would be reduced. So that was just a thought, because many of the people that I talked to, and there are people that I represent, were afraid of the 3 to 7 period. I will continue, despite getting no information, I will continue to come here and try to work with you, but I have to be clear about what happened and what I still don't know. And Diana, if you would like to answer all of the questions that I put into writing, I would like to hear that now.
Let's back up for 1 second. We'll try to disseminate some of these questions. But first, I want to answer 2 of the questions because I was involved in those. It was interesting that Councilor DeSorger brought up the request for information, because Chief of Staff Letourneau and I and the finance director talked about this, because I saw it as an issue that we wanted to tweak early on, only because I want to make sure you're getting the information because several of you have come to me. I could talk to Councilor Bullock this week. I talked to Councilor DeSorga this week, and they were saying they were asking for information and they hadn't received it, or it was. So I asked two things. I asked our clerk and I asked the chief of staff, what is the policy? Where is the policy? We had a policy on how to ask for information. So, and that's been around for years, and it was intended so we all don't ask the same question multiple times. Where is this information stored? How's it work? And that happened this week. And my whole intent of that was two parts. One was so we all don't ask for the same information, that once it's asked once, we can get an answer and then get it out to all of you. And second of all, I want a logging system in our clerk's office that says Councilor Bullock asked for the financial parts of the grant on this date, and they were received on this date. And Kathy said, Dan, that's going to be a ton of work. And I said, yeah, probably so. And that's really was my answer. She'll tell you that was. And the reason is we won't have that where Councilor DeSorger says, I asked for 10 things and I only heard from 2. So be known that it's interesting that before you brought this up, and even you brought this up to me today, but they will both tell you I talked about this last Thursday. And it was because Councilor Bottomley had asked for information, and there were people asking for information. So rest assured that I'm trying to get the solve of that in cooperation with a Chief of Staff Letourneau and our own clerk, so we can log the requests and then get the information and then disseminate the information to everybody. So that piece is happening. And the second part that you said, and then I'm going to turn it over to the people that know more about this. When you mentioned that when Councilor Forgy and I met on Thursday, you wish everyone had known on Thursday. And the problem was, on Thursday, it was an idea. And if you notice, you're a person that loves dates and specifics. The memorandum of understanding with the union was only signed today. So anything that would have been spoken before they signed this would have really been an idea, not a plan. And when it was presented to us, it was presented as an idea. So I would have been more afraid of saying, this is what we're going to do, and then have it come back and say, just kidding. So I do appreciate the fact that we were going to have this meeting, and I was going to have this meeting no matter what. There was 3 reasons we were going to bump this meeting this week. We didn't have the information yet. It was going to snow, and I'm like, oh, no, we're having this meeting. Because people thought February 1st was the day, and that is really not unfair because that's next Wednesday. So I just want to say that a lot of it was an idea, not a plan. And then they had to put those details together to get us the plan. Maybe they knew the Monday and not Wednesday. That part I don't know, except I looked at the memorandum of understanding with the unions, and that was dated today. So if they didn't sign this, we wouldn't have a plan. So I'm not sure when this came to be. I'm going to turn this back over to Chief of Staff Letourneau, who had some answers to some of those questions, and then
I think there was an operational question or 2 in there too,
Yep.
but I'll just let that proceed, and if the chief feels that there's something he should answer.
And Councilor DeSorger, if there's clarification on any of those questions, just make sure that we get them, because that's what we're here for.
I am mindful that there are other counselors, and I assure you probably are too, that have questions they want to bring forward. So we'll try to be brief.
I'm trying to remember which operational question I was going to answer. Answering of information, maybe gathering, which Dan did talk about. Yes, we were trying to put, so one of the things that I did starting in 2020 when I first came into this job, and you can ask department heads what a pain I was about it, was to try and operationalize and create SOPs, checklists, tracking systems. I wanted to get a CRM system for the mayor's office for constituent correspondence. These are all software and or personnel things that most of which haven't happened yet, but we're doing the best we can. This is gonna, I don't want this to sound like an excuse. I understand what you mean, Councilor DeSorger. I want, with my voicemail at this moment is full. My email, if you don't get me and I don't see it in probably 6 to 9 hours, it goes to the second page. That's just me, so department heads, we are doing the best we can and coming up with this system that we had sort of verbally talked about in 2020 and started at first, where it all comes through the clerk's office, would help us be accountable that this wasn't answered and that wasn't answered. I know there was a point, I think maybe a year or two ago, where we had some counselors, we directed them to put certain larger requests into next request. And that felt, I think, to some counselors like, oh, you're pushing me off. I love next request. I love next request because it sends me reminders, it has a deadline, and it has emails. Not because I want it to necessarily be, I don't think that counselors should have to go through the same thing. I know you guys are city councilors, but like, we are human beings who are doing the best we can in a city that only really got into the 21st century of technology during COVID. So I apologize that you don't get the answers you want and the time you want. We are trying very hard, and we are actively now working on that, on top of working with all the other things that we have to work on, getting the information to the counselors. We're trying.
With respect to the grant, I've signed a lot of papers with that grant, starting back in the summertime when I authorized them to go forward with the application. And while we may have received stuff in October and November, we did not receive the official notification until December. So
It was December 16th, and the reason why it's post-dated is the most ridiculous question, a ridiculous story you guys would ever want to hear. So half of you will not believe me. But because of the way that the federal grant works, they notified the financial contact person on that grant. And the notification to the financial contact on that grant came in the form of an email that asked the person to log in to a portal to see whether we received the grant or not. The person listed on there was a treasurer collector who probably did not know that that the police department had applied for the grant. There are a flurry of emails that I was BCC'd and CC'd on where people were looking for some link because we had heard that we may have received this grant. And then by the time we realized that the link was in the wrong inbox, it was December 16th. That is the honest to God truth story.
Counselor DeSorga, just follow up on that, because I know there's a piece of that that you...
I'm going to let this go because I want my fellow counselors that we've all grown very
If
close over
this
this
was
week.
a plot from a movie, people would not believe it and they would send us back to
Okay.
the drawing board. It is honest to God
fine.
true.
I truly, you know me. I'm the kind of person that says, if you do the best you can, that's good enough. Because that's all we're asked of. That's all, if you, whatever system you think of. I think of it, from the time I was little, like, just do your best. But two things. Number one, I have that in front of me, just for anybody that wants to see it. It's signed by both people on November 16th, okay? And secondly, I was in a meeting. I was in a meeting with you on the 5th, asking for things that I just didn't get. It doesn't happen townwide. Every other department that I ask for information from, I can get it. And now, we'll just go on. We have to move forward.
Follow
but
me
I
around
just
for a
wanted
day,
to set the
Counselor.
record
Honest to
straight
God.
on this, okay? That's all. Over now.
Counselor Lapiensky.
I have two very brief comments, and then I have a couple questions about this. First comment is, if you provide us with full information up front, you'll get a lot less requests for information, and that might reduce your workload. Now, I don't mean that in a personal way. This could apply to anyone, but I can't help but notice there's a flaw in the logic there. With regard to Councilor DeSorger's statement that she picked up every call, she didn't pick up mine, but it wasn't important, so that's okay. Here's the thing. This plan, I think it's a decent plan. It very well might be the best we can do. It certainly could have been proposed, thought of, evaluated, agreed to 6 months ago. Actually, before I get into the question I have about the specific language here, where did we get the money to continue full coverage until March?
It's going to be overtime. budget, so it'll be burning through the overtime budget.
I guess my question is, last week, we couldn't afford that, now we can. Where did the new money come from for that?
It's not, I mean, maybe,
Do you understand why I'm
Diana
asking
should-
that?
Hold it. There you go.
Sure. So, as the staff has been leaving through attrition, as has been noted, we reassess the encumbrances that are in the budget, as Councilor Desor mentioned. And so each time, that's been freeing up a little bit of money because the folks that are leaving are a little bit higher paid than some folks we expect to come in. So that's where we feel like there'll be some money available for overtime. But it's still, the budget itself has paid out substantial buybacks that at the end of the year, we expect we will move off to compensated absences. But right now, the budget is still very much, to me, it feels very precarious. Like we understand that we need to add staff, but to do it within the confines of the money that we have now, I feel would be a little bit reckless.
I am concerned that the February 1st deadline was artificially imposed to create more urgency in the context of last week's meeting. My question with regard to this is, this states, and I am not the best mathematical person ever, so I might just have this wrong, but I don't think so. 4 days on, 4 days off. How many hours a week is that? It doesn't seem like it adds up to 40.
Some weeks it does, some weeks it doesn't.
I heard the chief say some weeks it does, some
I'm
weeks it
sorry,
doesn't.
actually you misspoke. It's 4 days on and 2 days off. So if you lay, isn't it that way?
No, that's not what this says.
Oh, I'm sorry, the new schedule.
This
I'm sorry,
says,
Chief.
starting March
Let's
1st,
jump in and do this before it gets really ugly. Okay, so you are right. So 4 days on is 40 hours, and then they go on 4 days off. The scheduling is done that way so we can have the same staffing during those time frames
Yeah.
for the first 10 and the second 10. It's the way it works. We're not going to stagger people that way. So there's 4 groups to cover 4 days on, 4 days off, twice. Days twice, eves twice, or whatever you want to call it till 3 a.m. You are correct. Some weeks there's 40, some weeks there aren't 40. Currently, it's the same situation. We work 4 days on, 2 days off. Some weeks you have full 40, some weeks you don't. It's just the way it rotates. They're not everybody. Some people are still on a 5-2 schedule. There's still some administration that are on 5-2 schedules. There's still some detectives that are on 5-2 schedules. Not a lot of them, but this allows us to staff where we can allow for a day off per shift, because again, we have that unfunded liability of vacation time that we need to pay at some point, whether it's giving them time off so their accruals come down, or we don't give anybody time off and we're gonna have to come up with, and I know Diana has these numbers because we've gone through them multiple times, a substantial amount of money that we're gonna have to pay people that we can't give time off to. That's just contractual. So that's how this schedule works. The unions we have talked about this schedule, to be honest with you, for years, because some people really like it. I don't like it because it leaves gaps. It's just a fact. It leaves gaps. You need actually 2 more sets of 4 people to cover those gaps, to have that schedule to continuously go. If you wanted to stick with 10s, again, I don't like it. I don't like the 12s because you're going to burn people out. And you're also going to burn through overtime, because now you are talking about a substantial amount of overtime to do 48 hours. And then still, on those other off weeks, you're still going to be over 40 hours. So I don't like that idea because we don't have the money. We don't have the bodies, and we're going to burn people out.
Yeah, okay.
So just on the 4 and 4, that's why it is that way.
Yeah, so I was asking a more specific question, which has to do with the idea that I understand a full-time job to be 40 hours a week. And it looks to me like part of the deal here is that we're going to be paying the full-time salaries for less than full-time hours. And look, the second part of this question is that this says anytime, this is the last sentence on the page, quote, "Any time worked outside of an employee's regular 10-hour-a-day work schedule will be considered overtime," but they haven't even gotten to 40 hours yet some of those weeks. So how can you pay someone overtime when they have worked less than 40 hours?
Police and fire are different. That's all I can tell you. It's not, it's Mass General law. I can't get into that right now. I don't have it sitting in front of me. That's just the way it works. And it's contractual again. They're waiving that right. Typically, it's 8 hours. Anything over the 8 hours, they're getting overtime, regardless of how many hours did they work prior. If an 8-hour day and we hold somebody for 2 hours, they get 2 hours overtime
Not
in
my
an 8-hour
question.
period. I'm answering your question. So this now, they're giving up their right to the 8-hour bid, their 10-hour bid. Anything over that 10 hours of the assigned shift, yes, that would be overtime.
Right.
Agreement.
But that would mean that they'd be getting overtime for hours that fall within the 40-hour work week.
Okay.
So
I-
nobody else in society gets that. That is a privilege that you are granting to Greenfield City police officers.
It's just not true, Counselor. I'm
Coun-
sorry.
Counselor Forgy, I'm just going to jump to Counselor Forgy for a second. I'm going to go to Bullock and Gilmore, but Counselor Forgy, do you have a statement on that piece? I see you coming out of your chair, so I...
I am coming out of my chair, thank you. I think that you need to look at other operations that are round the clock, that have manning round the clock to understand that kind of a shift. And if you are you working a day shift and a night shift, I'm going to use an example. Don't know if it's the way it is now, but it was back then. Fire department, it was 10 hours on during the day and 14 hours on during the night. Now, that means that they're staffed, they're in the station, they're ready to go. Do they get a call every night? They may not. They may get 10 calls, but you have to have the manpower there and you have to pay them. In an 8-week cycle, those 24 hours work themselves off. I mean, they work themselves down to a 40-hour week because people need time off. There's also not the overtime, the weekends and stuff like that. There's also the higher in the shift, but the normal work schedule was 10 hours on, 14 off. In an 8-week cycle, it comes out to everybody's working a 40-hour week.
Yeah, I mean, the easy question is that there are some industries where the day is where your overtime kicks in and some where the week. So in 1998, I worked at the Cane's Pickle Factory in Deerfield. Do you guys remember that place? And I worked there for a summer. We got overtime daily if we stayed past 7.5 hours a day. And so there was a lot of times where you could volunteer for that overtime. It didn't matter if I didn't work 40 hours a week. And I did volunteer for that overtime, and then I also offered the voluntary layoff because I did not like working in the factory.
Okay, but my point overall, I am not saying that officers should not be paid overtime if they work more than their shift in a day. I would want them to, because otherwise they're going to show up to my house grumpy, which they have not done. And I don't want grumpy guys with guns at my house ever. My point is that while that makes sense on a day-to-day, on a week-to-week, on a year-to-year, from the taxpayer's perspective, the taxpayer wants to get the 40 hours for that full-time salary. So day-to-day, yes, but I think this works out to about 38 hours a week, so those other 2 hours are already being paid out to the police officers, even though they're not expected to work them, and even though they will get overtime if they do. So that is a concern of the taxpayer. Even if it is policy, it doesn't make it good policy. I'm done with my questions for now.
Counselor Bullock.
Yeah, so I have a couple specific questions, and I had made a promise to be home at 8 p.m. for bedtime, and that does not seem like it's happening tonight.
An hour.
Yes, it will.
You got an
I'm
hour.
like-
It
Give or
might.
take.
It
I'm
might.
leaving at 8 as
As long as we
well.
ask questions and
Give or
we
take.
stop telling stories, we might get there.
Yeah, so my first question is, I'm wondering how much is the ARPA funding that you're committing to the police department moving forward?
You know, that's certainly a legitimate question. I think that number is a little fluid. Right now, we are talking about 152,000, I'm looking at this, 152,000, 151.2,
Okay.
give or take. Now, it has to do with, the grant is important, hiring those people and getting them on as soon as possible is important. So it's a little fluid as to at what point we may need to tap into ARPA. What I have committed is to use ARPA funds. I haven't committed to an exact number because like a lot of this, and I think that's what's hard for folks to get a handle on, is we don't always know the exact number. We pay bills every week, we pay
Yep.
bills every month, the encumbrances move like this throughout, so we have to decide that at this point, this is the number we want.
Yep.
So that's why I'm not going to say it's exactly that, or if it may be a little bit more.
Okay, and so that ARPA funding that you're willing to commit, is that to cover the quarter of the grant that we need, or will we need to commit an extra pot of funding through like a fiscal order or some other avenue, or is the ARPA going to cover that grant?
I'm going to let, we've discussed this, and again, it's not as clear-cut an answer, but I think Diana can probably help
So-
with it, and then I'll add whatever I need to.
So that is the second part of the worksheet that I'd provided. All the way to the right-hand side is the proposed amount for the proposal we're talking about until the end of the year with the additional staffing that we currently have. And then the bottom piece is the proposed grant. If there were to be, if we were to move forward with the grant, then I would anticipate about $70,790 by the end of the fiscal year that we would have incurred in expenses. And that is a very, again, fluid number because a lot of it is based on whether the folks have a degree, whether they, what type of overtime. I've included some overtime so we can be realistic about that. But that, again, is not an exact number, whether, and then also I did include, because the grant allows us to bill for the fringe as well. So I did an estimate based on our current benefit plans, if somebody were to take our highest benefits, what the possible fringe might be. So we would be able to submit for a 75% reimbursement of about the same amount that we would potentially be short in the police budget. Some of that is for fringe, as I noted, for health insurance, but we don't anticipate having a deficit at this time in health insurance. Again, that's a moving target because we're hiring people every day, but we don't at this time. So again, at the end of the day, we're just going to have some potential gaps or deficits that we have to fill, and this 70,000 would be part of the way we would fill that.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, so and I understand these numbers are somewhat fluid. There will be the $151-ish thousand from ARPA funding, give or take-ish. And then there will potentially be another $70,000 to $90,000. Is it the 70 for the reimbursement and then then the 22 for the fringe?
Well, the 70 would be what we would expect for the reimbursement from the grant, 75% of the full amount of salaries and fringe.
Okay. So then there would potentially be another $70-ish thousand that we have to find.
No, that's coming from the grant. So what I'm saying is you wouldn't need any other money in the police department budget.
Okay.
at
The
end of the year.
151 is all we would need for 2023.
Yes.
Okay.
As far as, right now, if things were to move forward the way we're presenting them.
Okay.
Again, there's overtime, there's always, there's, as everyone has alluded to, you can't control call volume, there's other factors at play.
Yep. So I am really trying to keep this in a looking forward place, and I'm aware that we're getting into budget season for 2024.
Very much so.
And I think all of us through the media, through these meetings, have rehashed how we have come to where we are currently today. And what I am requesting is that there's two big pieces of work that have sort of been asks to be moved forward that potentially don't have price tags attached to them. And in terms of next steps as we move into budget season, I think as a city councilor, as someone who in this past 2 weeks has received many of these emails, and many of them have been different than the emails I've received since May, right? They say, please don't let this happen, that we don't have an overnight force, and we need accountability and police reform within our city, right? So there's a lot of people in our community that are holding both things right now. So what I'm asking is moving forward, as we get into this budget season, that in good conscience, we are able to move 2 specific things forward. I have a much longer list that I'll send you guys, but for the sake of this meeting, I have two requests. One is that there's a Public Safety Commission overhaul, that there's a written complaints review process that's clear and public, and that we have no vacancies as long as we have applicants. And the other is an idea that sort of was hatched from Councillor Forgy and I having a conversation today, that or this week, they've all blended together, that there's coordination between the DV task force and the Public Safety Commission to push for collaboration and a coordinated review of background checks and investigation of allegations of violence by officers in the Greenfield Police Department. And the second is specific to the COPS grant. I'll email you these, so don't feel like you have to take notes. The second is in reference to the COPS grant, that there is a thorough review of hiring policies and practices by an outside entity before we make these hires, and that background checks, that there's thorough background checks, and that there's consultation for a DEI process to hiring before we hire for this grant. And so that might have a price tag, but I think
it was $100,000.
I think it might have been. So there's a third bullet that I won't read tonight that's relating to that. But those are the 2 requests as we move into the next budget season, that those are actual bodies of work that could be easily moved forward and be a start to some of the things that I think the community's asking for. The last question I have is, it looked like with these timings, there was a potential to hire starting in March. Is that because we have applicants in the pipeline?
Just real quick, we have 2 individuals who had gone through our training as reserve officers, or specials we'll call them, because we're not civil service anymore. They're certified. We actually checked this week between Post and the Bridge Academy that neither one of them would actually have to go away to a full-time academy, because that's obviously a cost, a big-time cost. So we do have 2 currently that are residents of the county that we've talked to, because we've trained them. I can't guarantee you right now that they're going to say yes, because I don't want to promise them anything.
Yep.
But we do have 2 potential that would be turnkey, because we've already trained them. They've already been with us for a couple of years anyway as part-time. One is a full-time police officer in another community, don't want to name it, just in case they don't want to lose them. And then the other one works for the Franklin County Sheriff's Department, so we do collaborate with them as well.
Okay, great. I would ask that those 2 individuals, or however many in the pipeline, go through this process, the process that I've named, and I will send you all those 2 things, plus a few more.
If you also want to, if you want to email Lieutenant Dodge.
Yep.
And he'll send you who we use currently for the outside vetting process for hiring, because we do use an outside application program. So
Yep.
he can send that to you. And you can look.
Great.
Councillor Gilmore.
Yeah, I want to go back to the hours, because I don't think I understand how this is written out in this agreement. But this averages to be 35 hours a week, and the narrative that we've been getting for the last year has been that they're overworked. And then it references on the second page in the first paragraph that they're going to get an extra $600 per pay period as compensation for the inconvenience. And I'm wondering if we can afford to, if they're working 35 hours a week and getting an extra $600 per pay period, I'm really questioning what kind of hours are they working currently when we're being told that they're burning through overtime. I really want to know what's the normal state if this is what, you know, and I got to say, like, the fastest impact bargaining in the history of ever.
Totally.
You better believe it.
So that's a 2-week pay period first, just to make sure that's clear. And it is $30 per hour for the additional hours, the way it was explained to me, which is less than many of the officers make and more than some of them make. But they've all agreed to it. That's the simple answer from the non-police officer sitting here.
I mean, I can.
Wanna elaborate?
Into it, but it's
You should just pull a chair.
So the normal schedule for patrol is 4 on, 2 off. 4 days on, 8-hour shift, 2 days off, 4 days on, 2 days off, so you rotate in. Administration is still 5 and 2. Normal hours, whatever that might be, start to finish. That's their normal shift. It takes 6 officers to cover, patrol officers to cover a 4 and 2 schedule for the 8 days.
No, I used to work
working-
4 on 2
Yeah,
off when I was in the military.
Oh, I'm just
and in
saying that's
that-
what we work currently,
Right.
and then we're going to this so that we can have the same amount of officers to respond to calls on those 2 10-hour periods, so we can still grant the time off that right now, if we grant time off, it's overtime.
Right.
It's just overtime. We're currently 5 bodies short. The 6th is leaving in February. So that's why we're going to burn through our overtime to keep the shifts filled on midnights. We'll hold people over. We'll do overtime. If we can't have somebody volunteer for overtime, we'll hold them. We'll force them. But that's going to be overtime to get us through February. That's why we're not starting this till March 1st.
Well, so I think where I'm confused is, I worked 4 on 2 off when I was in the military.
I'm going to tell you,
and it
they're getting
worked-
more days off, if that's what you're asking. You are absolutely right. They're giving up their union rights to provide extra hours of coverage every day on a temporary basis until we can get through budget season in hopes that we don't have to do this. If we can come to hopefully some agreement through budget season, if we can get the grant application done and that going, that's 3 officers right there. If we bring back a 4th officer, maybe we can fill with overtime again and get back to a midnight shift and not this schedule. But you are 100% right. They are making more money for the giving up of their union rights. And yes, we did this exceptionally quick.
Right, no,
and I
but
begged,
I understand, but
so-
I'm missing something here, because
Yep.
right now, you're talking about they're 4 on, 2 off. The agreement says 4 on, 4 off, so more time off, but they're getting the $600 every 2 weeks stipend. I don't understand how this results in having more coverage. It sounds like it's less coverage.
They're working 10 hours, 4 10s, not 4 8 hours.
They were
4
working
10
4 on, 2 off with only 8 hours, 8-hour shifts?
They're going forward, 4 days on, 4 days off. Everybody's doing 10-hour shifts. There'll be 20 hours of coverage on this.
So the
this
4 on,
schedule.
I'm not trying to interrupt you. I think I understand now. The 4 on, 2 off was an 8-hour shift.
Correct.
So they were in 36 hours.
There were 3 shifts of 4 on, 2 off,
Okay.
and they rotate. And again, it's contractual, it's negotiated. We actually, years ago, got more hours. They were working a 5-day on, 3-day off schedule when I first got here.
Oh, I don't think anyone should be working
No,
those,
I'm just saying, if
like,
you do the
long,
math,
crazy
we actually
hours, but-
added a whole lot of days back in, so.
It doesn't work out like a normal work week, like regular civilian people. It's not per week because of the on-off thing. I had the same exact problem as you're having right now.
Right,
Yeah,
so,
it's like the
yeah.
round and round and round.
When I did 4 on, 2 off, I mean, I was doing 12-hour shifts. So, like, I know that's not something you can sustain for, you know, a 20-year career. I get that. There's a reason I'm out now. But I'm bothered by this because I feel like the way this was presented to us before is that they're all working overtime. We don't have enough coverage. And I'm assuming that means that they're working these, like, 50 hours, 60 hours. And I was feeling really bad because I know, like, medical workers often do have to do that. And now I'm looking at this going,
Yeah.
what crisis are
Well,
we talking about?
So some were, and this will alleviate that. They won't be doing that, which is safer for the community. But the other part, and this is, I think we brushed on it before, and it's something that gets forgotten in these particular contracts, and in many of the contracts in the city with the unions, if you don't take your vacation time, you get paid your vacation time, okay? And so we want them to have the rest days. I see you're shaking your head. I get it. I don't have that in my contract. But there's a certain point where it triggers and they actually get the money. And we don't have the money to pay out the vacation they're not taking. So this will ensure both are taking the vacation, so we're not ended up at the end of the year with a bunch of payouts, and also they get rest, and we get coverage all but those couple of hours. Is that accurate? That's accurate, right?
Fantastic. I hope
Counselor
that-
Gilmore is-
Hope that answered your question.
It does, yeah, it answers my question. I don't know that it addresses my concern.
No doubt. I'm not even going to doubt you on that one. No doubt at all.
Counselor Toronto.
Point of order, can we get a fourth microphone? Because I find it difficult to
And a chair.
receive that.
Why don't
Yeah,
we
yeah.
take Counselor Elmer's microphone? No, Counselor Elmer's not going to miss it.
Yeah. You okay with that, Counselor?
Testing, okay, hi.
Sing it.
And Chief of Staff Letourneau, if you want to move up to the table, by all means.
I'm just looking over what I'd written because some have already been asked. So is there going to be any type of, I guess this is elaborating on someone else's question, I think Ginny's question about clearing the area for fire support, things like that. Is there going to be any part of this plan that could cover those kind of emergency but non-life-threatening kind of things? I.e., I don't know, we had some water main breaks last year. Obviously, police were showing up to those probably first in some response by getting a call from somebody, and then, then obviously DPW gets involved and things like that. Or if there's lines down, I know that sometimes you have to have somebody show up for that kind of thing. Is there any kind of staffing idea that could do that? Because I know you had said before that, the reason why you don't want to send, only 2 people on a shift is for their safety, for responding to calls like domestic violence calls or, confrontations. But as far as, I don't know, even having 1 or 2 folks around for something like that.
The easy answer is if we're there, we have a duty to act.
Yep.
Period. It doesn't matter if it's a line down or a domestic. So if someone's there, we have to do it. The state police are going to be that primary from 3 to 7. We've had multiple conversations, despite what the recorder said, that we had talks before the meetings. We had talks after the meetings. I had a talk today. I have a 10 o'clock meeting tomorrow. While there is no such thing right now as a formal request. I'm not putting anything in writing. They are the primary. They have to by law. But we are speaking with them to say, during those hours, if you happen to have some more people, that would be great. And this is the time to ask them with their structure. But that doesn't mean that I have any control over the state police.
Right.
But they are aware of everything that's going on here. They've been watching these meetings. Someone has been sitting on Zoom watching this meeting, last meeting. And again, we're talking again tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. We are hoping that this is a very temporary situation. If we can get more bodies in our building, I'm hoping we can at some point have a different plan before the 30th of June.
To answer your question, ooh, that was a loud mic, I'm sorry. I wanted to answer the question about emergencies or unforeseen things. You said like wires down, things like that. Those are already things that when they happen, if we have to call in extra people, then it hits overtime, that could still happen. Those are also things that have always been unforeseen in budgets, and we just have to deal with it when it happens.
Okay.
If we need to, we're going to hold people. We're not going to just, 3 a.m. if there's a emergency happening, we're not going home. I mean,
Right,
we're going to still be there to finish it out.
Of course.
After 3 o'clock, if it, the details assignments that was brought up last week, most of the people you see out there on the details that are out there aren't actual police officers. They're
Right.
retired or they work for other agencies. We'll still have the ability for that. That's a different program. That's a different situation. A lot of lines and trees down now, and I'm sure the fire chiefs here can answer it. A lot of them we can't even get to be honest with you. A storm, we don't have that ability. But if we have something, which we've had, where we've had the flooding and everything else, we'll bring people in on overtime. I'm not guaranteeing how much we have. But we're not just going to ignore it. I mean, if we're going to have certain situations, because again, we're still on call for detective work too.
Right.
People pass away, unfortunately, at the early hours of the morning. State police aren't going to handle those things for us. So we're still going to be handling those things. And do I want Them going by themselves at that hour in the morning, depending on what it is, absolutely not. So we'll probably be calling in our own people for overtime. This is not a fix-all elimination of all overtime. Also, if we need to call people in early for that 4-hour block, we have the ability to do that more Monday through Friday because of administrative people. The supervisors union is part of this as well, and they're giving up, basically working out a grade, right? So they're going to be answering calls as well. So if we have to call in people, we will do that, and we will hold them over. And if there's an emergencies, we will do that. And if the state police come and it's something that they need assistance with because it's going to be tied up and they're going to have to take off, then we're going to have to figure out calling in somebody on overtime.
Right.
Those are things we're going to have to figure out. They're not going to be gone away. It's just primary coverage and patrol from those hours as it stands. Primary won't be there. The state police will be primary. But if we have to come in, we will. We're not going to ignore things.
I appreciate the answer, and I think that that's a more clear representation of what can happen during the times we don't have a shift, rather than the idea of it being, blanketly, you're not going to have anybody there. And nobody's going to respond to anything unless it's life or death, because that was kind of what we were given before. So I'm glad that that's a better.
Councilor Toronzo, that's the question of the night so far. That gap that you just identified, and the chief gave us the answer we've been looking for, since I sat with him a week ago, and it was exactly that. I finally heard what I wanted to hear. If there was an emergency, our people would not just go home. You asked that question. I think that question alone shows that we're not going to have, if there's a true emergency in our community, overtime is still available. And the detective part that the chief just explained.
Right.
If someone passes away at 4 a.m, it's going to be our detective that goes there, and that'll just happen. So thank you for asking that, and Chief, thanks for that explanation, because I think that's one of the questions I was most concerned about.
Right. So, and I don't want to bring up bad feelings or anything as well, but I do know that in the past I'd made some comments that weren't that great about, kind of playing dirty pool. And while I appreciate the football analogy of a Hail Mary, I have another one, and that's called the ball was dropped on the planning. And I want that to be clear, that because I don't think it really was, and I don't think it was reported that way, that though we made the cuts in May, as others have echoed, there's been 8 months since that happened, and we've heard crickets, other than a possibility of the report we received in the late spring, early summer about what potential things could happen. So that means there was already the idea that this could happen, and I've heard answers like, well, we didn't know necessarily how much money it was going to be or how much we would have left. Well, that's what accounting is for. If you know what your budget is, and you don't have to wait for a quarterly report or a half-year report, especially if you already know you're gonna be lower than what you thought. That should have been, to me, that would have been first and foremost on my whiteboard of what I got to deal with. And while I'm happy that some solution has been reached, and obviously I think it should be expected that there would be skepticism from the public about how quickly that happened, and it's great that negotiations happen. I know that they take a long time, a lot of time with the unions, but if nothing else, I would hope that this would be a lesson about foresight in any situation. When you're dealt what I'm sure that you feel is a raw deal. Schools have been cut before. DPW's been cut before. I'm sure the fire department's probably been cut before. And the things that get done to accommodate that, to make it work, have been, I'm sure that it sucks for them too. And there's never easy answers, but those are the things that have to be dealt with throughout. And as I said last week, it unfortunately felt like another political move to rehash tossing us under the bus for making that cut, because there was no solution at the time. There was no financial order brought up at the time. There was nothing other than to report, hey, remember that thing you guys did 8 months ago? Well, now everybody's going to be pissed off about it. And, I hope that moving forward, we don't have to have something like this happen again, regardless of where the cut is, what department it's for, what the motivation is. It's just, there are things that might not go the way that's proposed or the way that you want it to. And I think it's just a more adult way, frankly, to deal with it is, well, pull up your bootstraps, you know, and make something work. But, sorry, tangent. So the other question I had was so last week when we were talking about the hiring, it was like there's no pool of applicants out there. There's nobody out there. That was the response I got with asking that question, was there was nobody out there.
That wasn't, that wasn't at all what I said. As of last week, we didn't have an answer from Post or Bridge. We got those yesterday sitting in my office. That's when I made the phone calls.
Okay.
We also had one of the two that wasn't even considering taking a job because of what's going on. Understandably enough, they have a
Right.
full-time job somewhere else. Conversations have happened since Monday.
Right.
So,
So I guess my question would be, if this is, how would the, I guess that,
I think you're
it's a little bit frustrating because how. Stop. Hey.
Get out.
Can we just, there's no press,
Body of people here that have to listen to all you guys' dog and pony show again. There's people here that would like to speak. You suspended public comment for this. There's a bunch of people out there that have all kinds of stuff to say about this. And he's lying.
Nope.
Thanks for, do your job, Dan.
I am doing my job.
Until you suspended public comment.
There is no precedent and there is no past history of allowing public comment at a special meeting ever of this council.
This is a little bit, we all came here because.
Point of order. Just because something hasn't been done before
I didn't
doesn't
call-
mean it's not the right thing to do.
We all know why we're here, and everybody's jumping around like it's a circus. This
I'm
community
gonna-
wants this man gone.
I'm gonna ask you to refrain. I'm gonna ask.
Yes, let's cut.
I'm gonna ask you to stop. Yeah, I'm gonna ask you to stop, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm gonna ask you to stop. Thank you.
Councillor Toronzo, I actually think I know what you're talking about with last week with the staffing question. It was a little unclear, and the chief was using the term like we don't have the bodies. Is that what you mean? Like we don't have the staffing, we don't have the bodies?
I asked the question, if you were to have $1 million right now, would you be able to staff? And you said, there's nobody out there. It would take, it was like this long time it was going to take to whether or not it would even be staffed before the end of the year.
I'm not sure.
I'm asking you to stop, or I'm gonna ask to have you removed. Thanks.
I believe I referenced that we had a couple part-time special type of, they weren't interested. I have to be honest, they weren't interested prior to this. The talks have happened. And again, I'm not, like I said earlier, I'm not guaranteeing they're going to say yes. I have two people that fit qualifications that we've trained. Now, again, we've had preliminary talks that this grant might be here. I have no guarantee from them, but I also don't have a guarantee that I have the grant. So I haven't said to them, you have a job offer. No. I am hopeful that the conversations that have happened, that both would want to come here. I can't guarantee that. But we do have two viable, trained people. But again, I don't have any positions for them yet, and I haven't made any job offer yet. We would still be putting out onto our application site to fill those spots, because again, we may not have those two. They may not say yes.
Right.
And I can't guarantee you that. If we have somebody that is completely never worked in law enforcement before, we are looking at a year between training. I mean, they'd have to go to an academy, 6-month academy. I don't know when they're running. We probably wouldn't do what we do in the past because there is no reserve academy anymore for certain levels. I think we're in year 3 now or year 2, where if you didn't bridge in year 1, you're now not eligible. If you didn't go through bridge in year 2, you're not going to be eligible. Bridge 2 ends this year, so we're going into bridge 3. If we don't have somebody that's viable to work right now, technically we can't put them on full-time without either bridge certification or an academy. So we could work them on a part-time, but they wouldn't fulfill the grant position or a full-time position with us by definition anymore due to police reform. That's all. That's all I mean by it. It's not tomorrow. Unless we have 3 people that are academy trained, ready to go, that'd be great.
So it sounds like there was already this combination of, as you were saying, that having been on the reserve officer trained by us, right? And then having,
They're special officers. We
Right.
don't have reserves anymore. We're not civil service.
Gotcha.
But they had come on, they had been trained, they've gone through our FTO program.
okay. So that is this by some sort of waiver that this is happening, or is this a normal process that should have been allowed all along?
And this came with police reform in the Bridge Academy, where they took trainings from other, so that you have a reserve academy. You used to have to go, regardless if you had the reserve academy, you had to go to the full-time academy.
Right.
What they did is they said if you have X amount of hours working in a law enforcement capacity, that you could petition to have those hours qualify you for at least the hours of work. Then you need to be firearms trained, CPR, all the major categories, legal, all of that as well. And if you complete all that, then you can get a waiver to say you don't need to go to a full-time academy, and that's what's called the Bridge Academy.
Okay.
When the police reform came in, they did it by alphabet. So A through H needed to be bridged in year 1. They had to start the bridge process and be complete in year 1, and then H through, I think it's P, I'm not sure, and then all the way through the end of the alphabet in year 3.
Okay.
So if you were in the end of the alphabet, you had 3 years before you had to complete it.
Okay.
And I believe we're entering year 3, July 1.
Okay.
So.
And is that going away in the future? Are you saying this is the last?
In theory, as soon as we get through the whole alphabet right now, there shouldn't be any more bridge.
Right.
And then the new series would be going to the full-time police academy.
All the time?
All the time.
Okay.
There's a new police academy opened up in Holyoke. They're going to try to run more classes because that was the issue, because we couldn't run enough classes to get people certified. I mean, Chicopee hires somebody, they're hiring 20, and they're taking up 20 seats in a 40-person class.
Right.
So Springfield and Worcester are the only 2 around here that run their own academies for their own officers. Everybody else shares.
Okay.
So
That's,
Can,
it's helpful to know what again, what the difference is, it's almost that old saying, like, where there's a will, there's a way. Like, there were options out there, and again, it's not for the sake of stirring up anything again. It's more to, I don't know, use that as a lesson of foresight, and along with the presentation of information is, like I said, when we left last week, it sounded like didn't matter if we had a financial order to give you $500,000, you wouldn't have been able to do anything, and there were no options, and that's what I meant by the like doom and gloom that I was talking about, and so this is a lot more constructive to get real answers rather than,
President Gwynn.
poor outlook.
Yes.
I don't want to interrupt Councilor Torenzo. If he's done, yeah.
Good.
If I may respond briefly to the dropped ball comment. Back in the spring, I believe it was Deputy Chief Gordon, then acting chief, when he came before the council, he mentioned different options that could occur down the road, but that we also planned to fully staff the department for as long as we could with the money that we had. That was the plan presented. Knowing that we had attrition coming down the pike to some degree that would help us extend that time frame. So that is the plan that was put into place, rightly or wrongly at the time, but it did serve the purpose of getting us through the spring, the summer, and the early fall. To the point that we are at now, we would not have come to you with a financial order much before now as it is. It's just generally not done until we know, I mean, that financial order for a supplemental budget might not just include the police department, it might include other departments at this point in time. But it would not have come in September or October. It probably wouldn't have come even until probably about right now. In the meantime, we have the grant, and while I appreciate your concerns, meanwhile, we also had the grant, which looks like a very promising way to begin to restore the police staffing in a way that it's paid for under the grant and not through the general fund or through the asking you for more money. We're not saying that we won't come to you before too long with a supplemental request, but what we're saying is this is the plan that we have in place that we believe we can afford in a variety of ways. So I guess the bottom line is, at the end of the day, your 11 to 7 shift is primarily fully staffed, all but 4 hours, and I think the chief gave you the ins and outs of how those 4 hours would get handled. So just wanting to make sure that that was clear.
Councillor Forgy is next.
Okay, I came here this evening hoping that, expecting actually that we would be sitting here discussing the plan. And I do have questions specific to that. I understand everybody's frustration at this point. I will ask my questions about the plan first, and then I would appreciate an opportunity to speak after my questions, if that's okay with everybody. My question is to the chief, and I'd really like to understand a little bit more why 3 to 7 a.m. cannot be funded or cannot be covered. Thank you.
To do that, it would have been 12-hour shifts, which was not part of the negotiations, unfortunately. The unions both worked with me very voluntarily. I didn't twist any arms. This was the best plan that all of us could come up with for that time frame. I don't think the 12s would have flown. I got to be honest with you. I don't think they would have. I think this was financially and schedule-wise the best plan we could come up with. Prior to this, as you heard last week, and I understand frustrating. I'm not here to defend anything like that, but they were on board with the other plan as well. So this was something we went back to immediately. I started texting my folks sitting behind the mayor as soon as I went back to my seat. I'll be honest with you, I got inspired by, I'll give Councillor Lapiansky my inspiration, because when I heard the $1.5 million number going out for the teachers to say, hey, just come to us with money, we'll do it. I was like, well, I'm gonna try to figure something out then. So I went back and again, I made an offer to these groups to say, can we sit down and talk and figure something out? And I went back to work and I was texting at the wee hours of the morning, and that was what we came to an agreement with the unions. I don't know how to staff that with overtime for 4-hour blocks. I don't think it would happen. I don't think I'm going to have it. We're still going to have overtime gaps. Again, I'm more than willing to bring people in if we have emergencies for that. But this was an agreement made, yes, very quickly, but I don't think it would have happened if last week didn't happen. And I'm sorry for that, but I don't think that would have happened. And to have two groups come to me with ideas as well as me going to them with ideas and coming to this for what we feel is the best we can offer right now, that's all I can say about that schedule.
Thank you. A couple of follow-ups on that, if I may. I have to say that personally, I'm not really happy with that 3 to 7 gap. I'm really not interested in having the state police in Greenfield. I want to know how fluid this plan is, i.e., example, If we start to run this and this is really unacceptable, it's not working out, are we back to the drawing board on all of it, on part of it? I guess I want to know how fluid it is and what options are out there for this plan if it does not work.
Well, I'm certainly not going to try to make the same mistakes twice. So the conversations have already started on how it would look if we could potentially have additional bodies on quicker rather than later. What would it look if we manipulate some positions around on shorter terms? Because as we close, if we get a couple more in and we start closing closer to that June 30th deadline, we know that maybe the budget is potentially, through the budget season, it's looking better. If we come back to you in 2 months because we have people in place and maybe it's going to cost some more overtime to fill those gaps, that's why we left it very open-ended in that agreement, that it's a June 30th deadline as far as temporary, but if we can fix this before that, we want to fix it before that. Again, it's getting people here that are ready to roll, to work, and I think we can start readdressing that. I'm willing, and so are some of the officers in positions that we could shift around temporarily to do that if we have additional bodies to make it happen. But we'll also probably have to come back to you for some additional funding. Now, whether or not that's in ARPA money that we're not going to use because we can get rid of this deal that's in place, that's possible too. But I'm going to continue talking about all this now in hopes that as things change and if the grant gets accepted, next month or whenever it goes before you, then I'll have a better idea if I can make offers to certain people. I mean, we're not inclined to just offer the people the jobs that are here. I hate to say that. We have to put it out. We want to see what candidates that are out there that apply. And that's no offense to the folks that are with me, but they're not full-time Greenfield officers. They're specials, just like, specials we've had before that have worked out great years ago when we went out of civil service for them. But I think we need to put it out to see what applicant pool that we have. I'm hopeful that we have some good applicants to come in. But I think the quicker we get people in, the faster this plan goes away. And I think we need to start talking about that now and how it's going to look and when we're going to do that as we get bodies in the building.
I wonder if you would consider, this is a thought, thinking off the top of my head, I wonder if you would consider having one Greenfield police officer on duty 3 to 7, whoever that person is, via an overtime piece, to be in the station. And the reason that I ask that is that we have other emergency services that have to roll, and there is lag time when you're doing callbacks into the station. I'm concerned about those others, actually. I know that in your previous presentation, you said the lobby would be open for DV victims and would be opened up for DV victims, or if you want to drop a baby off. I'm thinking of the dispatchers that are in-house without anybody else being there. I'm also thinking of our other emergency services, a car accident, a house fire, but what if you have a shots fired or somebody responding to a mental health crisis or a DV issue without quick response time? So I wonder if there's any possibility that that piece could be filled in with someone so that there is law enforcement present, a local law enforcement piece. And you don't have to answer me. This is just a thought that I have. It would make me feel, personally, it would make me feel much better to know that our employees that are also working those shifts as well have coverage and backup from the PD.
We have been talking about that.
Okay.
We actually talked about that when we were talking about this original plan that we didn't like. There's some challenges, but I will bring this back, and again, we'll be continuing to talk. So, and I understand, because I don't like the idea of dispatchers being in our building without somebody to call in an emergency. I've talked to Chief Strahan about this as well, as far as, you know, the potential of what we would ask from them. So yes, these conversations are happening and they will continue, and I appreciate bringing that up because it's very true.
Thank you. My final piece, actually, I have to say that this is my perspective. We had a jury verdict that was handed down. At the same time that that verdict was handed down, we were in the process of putting together our 23 budget. And it just, by the draw of the cards, it just happened to be the police department that evening. I think the council and the citizens in Greenfield, quite honestly, were very upset with the mayor for not taking immediate action to solve the problem with Chief Hague. I mean this all respectfully. This is my view. This is my view on everything. And as a result of that, the council took action in regard to the funding, and we did cut the budget or defund. That's another adjective that could be used at this particular time. The police department budget. Right now, I feel very strongly that the council needs to, as much as they possibly can, rise to the occasion and take the lead on putting these pieces together and filling the gaps that exist right now. What has happened to us as a result of the budget cuts is that we are down 6 people. That is what has happened to us. Budget cuts or attrition, we're down. If that was the intention of sweeping out the police department and getting new blood in there, I think that has been or we will be on the road to doing that. So I don't think we should sit back and think that it's them against us, who's right and who's wrong. Put emotions aside at this point and move forward. So this is where the council finds itself. Now we have a crisis. We have to solve this problem. A plan has come forward. I think it's a good start. I wish it had happened earlier. I really do. I heard councilors talk about the charter and bringing forward supplemental budgets, and I think that there was a real drop of the ball, lack of communication, not getting the job done that we needed to get to quite a while ago. If we're going to make this work, and I believe we can make this work, it's really got to be more than a matter of money and more than a matter of funding. Councilor Bullock mentioned that there are some things we'd like to see happen. I think they're within our reach. I think that we have Public Safety Commission that's coming back on board. I think that meetings where we overlap and communicate, those are the ways we solve our problems. I also think that we do have policies and procedures in place right now within all the departments and within the city of Greenfield. They may not be working well. Maybe it's incumbent upon us to figure out what we'd like to see happen as part of police reform and work toward that funding, as Mary Ann Bullock was mentioning before. It's a hard journey. It's been terrible. And it has been heartbreaking. But I do think we have to put aside the emotional piece at this point, get the safety of the citizens put first and foremost. Hold your nose if you have to. Tighten your belt if you have to. Whatever it is that you need to do, do it. We're the ones that can make it happen at this point. And it goes back to money. And as Councilor Lapiansky once said at one of our meetings, we have the money. The money can be given or the money can be withheld. And that's really the source of this council. Money, policy, procedures. We can ask for that. and we could ask for everybody's cooperation to get it done, but we got to get it done. That was the purpose of this meeting, was to listen to this plan coming forward. And like I said, I think it's a good start, but I think there are pieces that we have to work on, and we don't have the luxury of time, and we don't have the luxury of personal feelings. We just need to get the job done. Thank you very much.
Counselor Ricketts.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this brief because I want Council Bullock to keep her promise and get home by 8 o'clock. So, first of all, I like everything that you just said, Councilor Forgy. I think it's important. I do want to thank the Public Safety Commission for being here, so you see what's going to be happening in your future and the questions and things that will be coming toward you. So I'm there. I'm here for your support, 100%. And I agree. You know, this is checks and balances government. And so for us to sit here and just keep going over and over the same old thing, we're not getting anywhere with that. We really do have to move forward. So thank you for the plan. I'm glad that it's starting. Very selfishly, I'm glad that it's starting right now because Winter Carnival's before us. And we have every town in this county comes to Greenfield for Winter Carnival, for the ice sculptures, for the beacon field, for everything that's going on. It's important that we have our police intact. And Chief Haig, when you said, no, you brought this forward and you're sorry about the way that happened, thank you very much for the apology. It meant a lot. It really meant a lot. And I just want to say that whatever, I'm willing to sit down with anyone, any bodies, so that we just keep going and we keep compromising and working this out. I don't care how fast this happened. I think, I'm just happy it did happen. We're very lucky to have the officers that we have and how devoted they are. I do have one question. Some people have recently retired, and I wondered if they could come back on the force. I'm not naming names, but there's one I do not want to come back at all. But can they come back and help because they're fully trained? And it's out of my purview, and I'm not going to say yes or no about anything, but I just wanted to bring that up if it's a possibility.
We have two possibilities, so it's been broached.
Okay, and just be very careful, can I say that with you
I understand what you're
understanding?
But the simple answer is, unfortunately, when they retire. Now, I'm not saying that this isn't the case for a couple. They have to still maintain their certification. It's not
Okay.
as easy as just being trained.
Okay.
That's kind of what happens these days as soon as you go away. But we have kicked around a couple of different things, and we will continue to do that.
It may be different for police than other people, but as you have
Okay.
seen, we have had former finance director Liz Gilman with us on this ride since she retired. There's a certain number of hours that they can work legally. As I say, it may be different for public safety people, and
Okay.
I didn't really ask that question to the chief. But, you know, it's a possibility. It's always a possibility to bring back good people. Good
People.
Yes.
Okay, and it's very important. But again, thank you, and I'm cutting this short because this is only supposed to be about the proposal you brought tonight. And thank you for this. I thank you for all this information. I hope that we can move forward, and I look forward to the next couple months of whatever you're going to bring forward to us. We have a big budget season ahead of us just in general, and I know how tight money is, but there's lots going on in our downtown. Everything is starting to happen for the good, and so we really do need the police. So thank you for whatever you can do to keep everything going. Thank you.
Counselor Healy.
Actually, a lot of the stuff I wanted to touch on was touched on by Counselor Forgy and Counselor Ricketts, but I will leave it off with, I just want to thank our officers. I think coming up with this agreement in short time after being dragged through the mud really shows their commitment and dedication to the city, and I want them to know we appreciate them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any counselor that has not spoken this evening that would like to speak before I allow follow-ups? Counselor Bottomley.
Yeah, I just want to hit on a couple points. Our primary role is oversight. And my experience in the 3 years that I've been here is that the department heads are incredible. They provide us with extreme amounts of information. Everyone can attest to that who listens to Director Warner and all the information for DPW. We usually get this weeks, if not months in advance. We get this several meetings in advance in Ways and Means and City Council. There were comments made about the police cuts that we made caused this problem. I don't believe that, but you know what? Whether it's Councilor Forgy and I differing in our opinion, we have no way to check it because we weren't given any information, especially the encumbrance numbers. We actually don't know how those, that's 1.2 million? We don't know how that's determined. We have no way to determine it because no one has shown us any documents, no one has talked to us. We don't know how many positions there. Have they included the positions that have left, the new positions? There are line items like communications, parking, dispatch that can transfer between the department. We don't have any of that information of what's left to determine if it was indeed our cut or if there's room somewhere else. Now, I trust you that you have looked at this, but our role is oversight. So that means we have to look at the numbers and we decide because we're a check on the executive branch. And as far as being a check, I just have to say there is no excuse for 2 weeks' notice. There's no excuse for that. We all know that government works slowly. We have plenty of times to review things. Every other department has given us reams of information to review, and yet we get like a teeny little blurb, we get something on the night of. I know it's a crisis, but I believe we need to do better going forward, and that's what I worry about, because we're talking about rehashing the past because we have budget season coming. I don't want another stunt, another scare tactic coming at us, and I want the information that we can look at. If you're telling us the truth, it's going to be awesome because we'll agree. It'll make it a lot easier. And just one last thing, there's also a big cloud still hanging over us, and that's the chief's post-certification. I don't know if you've heard anything on that. That's hanging over all of us.
Is that a question? The post, is that a question? No.
Any other counselors that have not spoken? All right, there was, who does? Counselor Elmer.
Yes, I would like Marianne to get to go home too, so I'll keep it short. I appreciate that we're in such a better place today than we were a week ago, and I want to thank everybody who did the work to get us here. Thank you.
I am going to continue the questioning, but by policy, we have to take a 5-minute break right now. If any counselor feels like they have to leave at this point in time and wants to join us remotely, we can, but we are going to take a 5-minute recess, and we will return in 5 minutes. So all of the counselors have spoken to this. We have not heard, we've heard from all the department heads, which I asked to be here this evening. And we have our Public Safety Commission present also. If any counselors had anything along those lines. I will open the floor going forward to additional questions. Please, what I'd like to do is ask questions that we can get answers to tonight, and then ask questions that need follow-up, but in a way that we can get them to Director Letourneau, Chief of Staff Letourneau, or Finance Director. You know, that's what we need. Councilor Gilmore.
I have a question that I know can't be answered tonight, so I'm going to, but I want to verify, because you just outlined a new procedure, so we're going to send the question to you, and then copy and Vice President Forgy in case you get hit by a bus or something, and then you're going to track it for us?
No,
How do you want me to do this tomorrow?
You are going to just do everything. You're going to send, you have a question to a director or, yeah, you can ask the question on the floor if you'd like, but all I'm saying is at this point in time, copy the council president and vice president, the clerk, and the department head and the chief of staff to make sure that she's aware and we're aware of the request, so it can be tracked to make sure that nothing is falling through. And Councilor Bullock and I had a conversation a moment ago about a piece of Google software that she has that she can track that memo that goes to Kathy, and that will be, once again, that's what working together is about. So thank you, Councilor Bullock. So that would be the procedure at this point. Not much different than we have done in the past, and Councilor DeSorger's been doing since I sat next to her in copying multiple people. I want, if Danny knows it happened, I want to know we know it happened, and then I want to answer as to why we're not receiving it or where we're missing it if it falls through. That's the only reason for that. We have some people that had additional questions. Councilor Mayo, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I'll forego that question and to expedite things.
Thank you, Councilor Mayo. Councilor Lapinski, did you have a follow-up question?
Well, I guess I first have to ask, why did the chief bail on us? We had more questions for him. Does anybody know where he went?
I was actually also going to leave at 8 when we set up this meeting, and we're all having a conversation during the break, and I told him to go. And I decided to stay, so I told him he could go.
Okay.
I thought, yeah.
I have a couple of questions for Danny and the mayor, but I have a question for you, President Gwynn. I'm imagining our questions are going to wrap up fairly soon. We don't have anything else on the agenda.
Correct.
Would you be opposed to allowing public comment at the end so those who want to leave can leave and those who want to hear from the public can stay?
Yeah, it wasn't listed in the agenda. I'm not prepared to change the agenda for a special meeting.
Okay, so let it be noted that the chair does not want to hear from the public, even if he does not have to stay for it. Mayor, I guess I really have one question remaining because my other questions were for the chief, and I can no longer ask him those questions. In this meeting, of course I can ask him the questions. You recognize that the makeup of this council is such that there's a decent chance there will be another budget cut this year. So it won't be a surprise this time if it happens. It might not happen. I can't tell you who's going to vote for what. I'm dying to know what the chief said I gave him an idea for, but anyway. Have you started planning in advance for that potential in a way that could avoid this kind of situation, let's call it?
I am currently working on both the operating budget, and we're at the stage where each department head is coming before me to give me their budgets and their justification for it. I'm also working on the capital budget. So yes, that process has begun. Yes, I am meeting with department heads, and I have met with the chief, and he is bringing forward a budget that fully staffs the department. Understanding that we have now had contractual agreements that are going to cause that budget to increase to a certain extent. The way the budget process works is all departments, including my own, get guidelines from the finance director. Because Liz started that process, our guidelines have come from her. When all the budgets they've all been entered into Munis, but there are some changes that occur as a result of the conversations that I have with each department head. If you want me to continue to answer this question and you're listening, I'll be happy to continue. So what happens is eventually we have a directive from the finance director that says, okay, all budgets are in, all meetings have been held, it's time to roll the budget, so to speak. In other words, that is to lock it in with any changes that you've made in the interim at a certain point in time so that we can begin the process of bringing the budget forward. So I can't anticipate any better than that what this council will do, but I think and certainly Vice President Forgy spoke to it very eloquently this evening, and I appreciate that, is, we have come forward to you with a plan. It is dependent on the potential for additional financing, but we think we can do it. It will carry us through to June 30th. We should have a budget by July 1. And I think I ended my comments to you this evening, that we will be looking forward to working with you to come back, to achieve a budget for the police department in particular that fully staffs the police department. I know that Councilor Bullock wants to send us some information, and until I see it, I won't know if it's additional money or if it's a little bit more general than that. And then we have to think about the fact that we can't exceed the levy ceiling without going to a 2.5 override. So that is a discussion that we tend to have ahead of time so that we can present you with a balanced budget that prevents us from having to go to an override unless there's some extraordinary reason why we have to. And the citizens of Greenfield may feel like funding public safety, funding the schools may require that. But what we try to do as a good financial management position is come to you with a balanced budget that may have already been cut. From last year's police budget, I had cut $130,000 from it by the time it come to you. So that's all I can say. Yes, we're planning in advance, but I won't know until we come to the meeting in May what might be happening. So we're going to do our best to bring you a balanced budget overall.
Thank you, Mayor.
With the increases that are required in each department, and primarily most of them are contractual or the
Right,
result of
so-
increased
so
prices.
Specifically, the answer to my question was no. That is ultimately what you're saying, correct? No, you are not making an alternate plan.
That is not what I said at all. So-
You did say you cannot anticipate what we'll do, and it seems as though you are just going to present the number that you want without having an alternative backup plan if we were to make the same kind of cut again. I did have one other question for the chief. I'm just going to briefly make it in the form of a statement, which is that I noticed a big difference in his demeanor between that last week and this week. What I wanted to ask him was what caused the change. Danny, you know the answer to that?
I think it was Vice President Forgy in his conversation. And hearing from the public and hearing from you guys. But he's a human being, and I think that really hearing from people and hearing from Councilor Forgy and hearing somebody he's worked with when she was the mayor and previously.
Sure. Well,
I
so
mean, I'm
thank you
speaking for him and he's not here, but I
Mm-hmm.
know, I
Yeah.
was in on some of these conversations.
I would agree with that.
I have not made myself known to be a fan of the chief, but I do appreciate that shift. It's at least a step in the right direction, even if I'm of the opinion that he's probably not capable of redeeming himself in the eyes of the public at this point.
I think people on the council and others in the community who have met with him personally one-on-one on this issue and others know him to be the person that you saw here this evening. But he does operate, as Danny says, as a human being under a great deal of stress and has had to handle, you know, the issues of his police department. But yes, I think you saw what I know to be Chief Strahan. Chief Haig. Having worked with he and Chief Strahan and several others very closely during the early days of the pandemic. So I think what you see is generally somebody who cares very much about the community and wants to be cooperative, but also cares very much about the work that his people do and the rules under which they have to work.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. Before we go to, I didn't ask any questions really, I made a couple of statements. I have one question that one of the counselors, and I'm sorry, I don't remember which one of you was, but brought up last week when you asked about a public safety commission, and then we were told that they hadn't met in a long period of time. And then during the week, it was addressed again to me why aren't we having a public safety commission? According to charter, whose duty is it to call a public safety commission? Is it the public safety commission that calls the public safety commission, or is it the mayor that calls the public safety commission, or is it some other oversight I'm missing?
Well, you are asking an interesting and multi-layered question because we have now, just this week, I received it over the weekend, had another resignation. So right now, we have a Public Safety Commission of 3. I have communicated with them that they do need to meet very soon to reorganize. And I am receiving applications for additional, or letters of interest, I guess is the way it is, for people who are stepping up specifically for the Public Safety Commission. I feel like somewhere between next month and maybe March, there will be a full 5-member Public Safety Commission. But to answer your question, I think at this point, I have expressed to Fred Clark, and the David Lanoy and David Mascaratolo, that I would like for them to meet, if nothing more than to reorganize and choose at least a chair and a vice chair, so that then there will be some leadership.
And do they work as an independent body where they can call their own meetings? That's
right.
They don't need permission to meet.
Absolutely not.
They can meet on
No,
their
the
own.
normal process, if I recall correctly, is that they met on the 4th Wednesday of every month, maybe the 3rd Wednesday. There is it's not in the charter that they shall meet the 3rd Wednesday of every month, but they agree on that, and this typically has to do with what each member's schedules are like. Some people have commitments on Wednesday evenings, so they work that out. So it may be different going forward.
And I appreciate that. I just
monthly as a general rule, unless they don't have any reason to meet.
We had a very great presentation when we spoke to David Lanoy when he asked to be considered for that, and I think A&O would respond to that it was thorough, and it was his information on the subjects that this community is broaching right now is so in-depth and so superior to just about anyone I've spoken to on a lot of the concerns we have, that we just need to tap into these gentlemen that we are here and get them. They're wanting to come to work for us. We just got to get them on the job. We got to get these, some of you are not happy with our current way that we have a public safety commission, but right now, that's what the charter says. That's what we've doing, that's what you filled, and then we're trying to fill it back up. We just need to implement what we have right now, because we've got some really good people that we need to step forward now.
You had a very competent chair of the Public Safety Committee in Butch Hawkins, but for reasons actually associated with the charter, he had to step down. At that point, that left the vice chair and the rest of the committee to have meetings, and I don't recall if they've had any since then. I think maybe one, or at least one. But I think I'm asking you to give us a moment. Nobody wants to have that Public Safety Committee together than I do. So just remember that when I bring those appointments before you. And I think I'll certainly have one for February and most likely another one in March.
Gentlemen, you're both here tonight. You sat through the meeting. Would you like to take a minute and talk to the counselors, or add anything to tonight's discussion? I don't mean to put either one of you on the spot, but you are my guests, and I want to make sure that I recognize that you are here, and you both are our new members of that group. And I want to say, David, do you want?
Sure. I'd like to say that we have called an organizational meeting.
You just have to use the microphone. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hi. Oh, sorry. That's the loud mic. My name is David Moscaratolo, and first I want to say that I apologize that I couldn't have been here during the review process. I had some family personal issues that I've been dealing with as far as a caretaker, and but I would like to say that we have called a meeting for an organizational meeting. I believe it's this Wednesday, for 4 o'clock, to start the organizational process.
Place to be named and duly posted.
If you're late for this Wednesday, you mean next Wednesday? Yes.
Next Wednesday, yes. Next Wednesday. I apologize. 48 hours, yes. And the agenda will be posted for that meeting. But what I wanted to say, because some of you know me and some of you don't know me, but I've been studying quite a lot, and what I wanted to say is I can't speak for the rest of the commission, but I can speak for myself. And when I've looked at the responsibilities and I've been listening to everything that's been going on the last 6 or so months, some of my priorities being on this commission, and I wrote them down, are to review the process for appointments and promotions. Is it working? Is it not working? I think that's really important. To review the written complaint process. I think that's really important so we could gain trust in the community. Is the written process now working and not working? I don't know the answers to these questions. I haven't seen the processes. Review the discipline process. Is that working or not working? And, talk about a vision for the fire and police department. Do we have a vision? And does the vision include the employees of the departments? Does it include the public? And it doesn't include the administration? These are just my thoughts. They're not the commission's thoughts. I want to understand the regional policing policy a lot more. I think that's important. And also, I want to learn from the past events, good, bad, or ugly. I think we need to look at them, and we need to talk about them, and we need to move forward. So these are my personal thoughts being on the commission. So again, I apologize for not being here during the course of the interviews, but I do have my personal views on lots of things, like we all do. But I take this position very seriously, and I appreciate the support, and I appreciate Councilor Ricketts for saying that she, because of my past history, she has trust in me and that I won't let any rock be unturned. And I will ask the hard questions. I've asked the hard questions on the Fire Station Building Committee, and I will continue to ask the hard questions for the Greenfield residents. And I'm looking forward to next Wednesday's meeting where we reorganize. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner. And just be it known that it's not necessarily policy that people come to A&O and make any presentation. So your absence was not any reflection on your desire to be part of that commission, and my board would tell you that. Commissioner Lenoy, would you like to, seeing we open the microphone, would you like to say a word?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to echo what my colleague said about taking seriously what the charter says. And I may be a little long in the tooth, as I said when I addressed you previously, or when I thanked you for your unanimous vote. I participated in that charter. And the Public Safety Commission was born of the necessity for professional, objective oversight of two most important elements of the governance of a community, police and fire. I don't want to reiterate what I've done because you all know. What I hope to be able to do is provide information to you in real time that's fact-based with history. In my current capacities, I've written extensive analyses of the police reform bill, evidence-based policing, budgeting. And so it is incumbent upon us as a community, as I've heard tonight, and I've talked to many of you individually, for us to work together. And the way that we do that is to be able to provide you with information, not so you'll think a certain way or vote a certain way. Provide you with information, provide you with background, and I hope to be able to do that. And I'm willing to do that at any juncture, at any time, at any place. We're in an unfortunate situation where I don't recall public safety meetings happening during this period of difficulty in this community. That's when they should have happened the most. So I've been sworn, and I learned that we can call our own meetings, and so I took the bull by the horns on that. And I'm working with David and Commissioner Clark to make that happen. So we'll have a reorganizational meeting, hopefully this coming Wednesday. And then we'll go to work to be in compliance with the charter. I know there was discussion about the budget tonight and department heads going before the mayor. With respect to the fire and police, they go before the mayor and the commission. And so we'll be directly involved in that. And I know everybody wants to go home. It's a pleasure to serve with you. It's a pleasure to serve our community. I am hopeful that we can engage in dispassionate, productive conversations about what we need to do to provide good governance and confidence in what every citizen has the right to expect. Local government is where the rubber hits the road. So I look forward to being with you on those things and respectfully agreeing to disagree from time to time with civility and forbearance and mutual respect. Thank you.
Councilor Bullock.
I'm going to motion to adjourn, so can Catherine go first?
Oh,
sorry, I read I read the order wrong.
No, that's all right.
Wait, I don't want to stifle debate, but I also am we were here to discuss this plan, and we have veered, which I appreciate. These conversations need to happen, and we also have a Public Safety Commission meeting we can now go to on Wednesday. We have a city council meeting that will allow public comment coming up in 2 weeks.
Councilor Bullock, thank you for that statement. What I will do is I'll entertain questions on this plan.
That's a non-debatable motion.
It has not been seconded.
No motion yet, right?
I actually didn't make a full motion. I was more just sharing.
She made a statement.
Like
That's why
to
I'm
make
sorry.
a motion.
There, Councilor Healy. So I'll request that, and if we could, everyone's gotten a chance to speak once, and if we can ask a question about the plan, and then we can follow on the next one. Because if someone makes the motion to adjourn, once I've recognized them, then we're going to follow procedure. Counselor Golub.
I will keep this under 1 minute. It is adjacent to the plan, or I will try to make, I will keep this as short as I can. I am very aware that we're about to go into budget season, and that's why I'm making this comment. I thank you, Councilor Forgy, for naming the jury verdict, and I hear the desire to move forward. I also have the desire to move forward, but I think it's very important that the issues what happened last May, the issues that led to the budget cuts, haven't yet been addressed. And I'm sitting here with my heart racing, worried about the next 4 months, and with a lot of concern about what's to come. We can't just move forward without change. And so this is not a question to be addressed right now because we all need to go home. But the question is, what are you doing to address the systemic racism in our police department and the fact that we continue to have a police chief who was found liable for racial discrimination, animus, and retaliation? If we don't address this in the next 4 months, I'm very concerned about what is going to happen in May. And it feels very important to say right now because the plan is in response to the cuts that happened last May. And yeah, something's going to need to happen in order to not have a repeat of events.
Thank you. If we could ask questions about the plan before us, Counselor Forgy.
My question was not about the plan before us.
Okay, is it a question?
It's a comment.
Counselor Bottomley.
Sorry, mine is a comment too, so I don't know if.
We're bad at this.
Yeah,
We're bad,
this
yeah.
is
And
why
I go
Counselor
first with
Bullock
my comment.
Does anyone have any questions about this plan? About the plan that was put in front of us today? Does anyone have any questions to the commissioners that just spoke to you, because they're here for us? I had a question for Director, Chief of Staff. Thank you. I need Marianne with me at all times. Chief of Staff Letourneau, this has to do with this plan, kind of. Hiring process, which we spoke on before. I had asked you a question quickly, like, what are we going to do differently this time than we did last time when we're bringing people on to fill these spots? So that question to me is important. And it kind of goes with Councilor Golub's question is, what are we going to do different this time in our hiring process that we did last if we've been following procedure? And it might, with a new safety commission, a public safety commission, there might be a stronger piece, but what is that?
So I'm sorry that I was sitting, but I'm exhausted. I'm not trying.
No, that's all right. We're about
attitude.
We're about wrapped up, but I had started this question, and I think it bears interest.
So
I have an answer as well, so I'll let Danny answer.
Yeah. So starting in around 2019 and 2020, a number of changes were made to the hiring process, and some of the really progressive and interesting things that have been talked about. We got out of civil service. We went to this outside organization for hiring, started using the application process that's different, a different way of doing the interviews. That all started, and that's been happening. So this is probably not a satisfactory answer, but I think without saying names, we all know what we're talking about with certain individuals. If you look at hiring dates and dates when people started, we have started doing that back. We being the city, I mean, we as individuals here weren't here then, but so I think some of that has been happening, and I know that the mayor has some more information on this about other ways to keep going forward and including the Public Safety Commission more differently. So the answer is, what are we going to do differently? We'll probably not, we are learning and changing now, but we have already started doing things differently, both before the May verdict and as a result of the filing of the lawsuit several years prior to that. And then the mayor has more to add.
I asked that very question of the police chief, so I'm sorry he isn't here this evening, because he could give you chapter and verse, which I have
Mayor,
not been
I don't want to
able
interrupt you, but Mayor, that could be my fault. When I originally set up the plan for tonight, I thought we were going to go into the financial piece after
Yeah.
the initial thought, and
Yeah.
I had told him that he didn't have to stay through the financial piece. I thought it would be fine. So it
Okay.
could have been me kind of stepping on you for a change.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was
That's
texting
all right.
that, oh no, I thought they were talking about finances.
Yeah, and that's what he said to me. But that aside, I asked that very question to him, primarily around the promotional process, because that is really what we're talking about. And he has, I wouldn't say completely revamped it, but he has a new way of handling the promotion process. So I'm sorry that he isn't here to at least give you that information. I suspect if the commission, the Public Safety Commission, wanted to hear about that at some point in the near future, he would be more than happy to answer that question for them and thereby for the community. But I do know that he has talked about how it will be different going forward, and I urged him actually in May to begin to think about that. So he has now.
I have to add just a little bit, and this is probably more in the last week, since last week's meeting, that I know that this group of people who've been sitting up here, we are committed to saying, like, I'm not going to say we've done X, Y, and Z and that's all we're doing. I think we've all committed to saying we're going to keep learning and keep changing and relating and be willing to adjust and adapt based on the community. That was like the takeaway, a huge takeaway that, woulda, coulda, shoulda, maybe it should have happened in May or June or July, but it didn't, and it happened. Like I said, I'm exhausted because all week we've all been talking about this, and it's good because now it's like a willingness to be open to changing and adapting and pivoting when we need to. So that's kind of the answer.
Thank you. Councilor Healy, did you have anything? Councilor Bottomley with a question.
Quick question. I don't know if this relates to the plan, but you're talking about being open to new ways. Would you be open to bringing Daniel Yalovich back on the Human Rights Commission?
That is not a subject for this meeting tonight.
That's not an answer.
Councilor Bullock?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Not debatable? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned at 8:45 p.m. I'd like to thank all of you for a productive meeting, and I thank you for being here this evening.